Hi everyone, this is Jeffrey, JGB146 Blake from grinderschool.com, a small stakes poker training site, and we're partnering with WSOP.com to bring you some poker training videos. We're going to kick things off today with a quick review of the types of starting hands you want to play in Pot Limit Omaha. This is specific to 6 max, but you can kind of extend it if you're playing at a full table, at a 9-handed or 10-handed table. Just take this under the gun range and extend it into any earlier positions as well. Basically, what we're looking at is playing tight when we're out of position, and then adding in some hands and playing more loosely when we're in position, but still trying to play hands that really have the potential for hitting boards strongly. We want to make those big hands that hold up against our opponent's big hands. So we want to end up having very few of the second best hands and a lot of the best hands when we get action. That's really the goal. So what does that mean? Well, when we're under the gun, we'll play big pairs and double suited rundown cards. So, pocket aces with most kickers will play. If they're suited, then obviously we're playing them. If the kickers are connected, then we're playing and raising and so forth. Pocket kings, again, with most kickers, will play. A lot of that is going to be just, looking for the value of hitting a set of kings. Kings by themselves aren't going to be big enough to play a big pot, but they do win often enough to play if you've got decent connectedness or any kind of suitedness going on. And then high rundown cards that are connected. So Queen Jack 10 9, especially if it's suited. If it's double suited, then you can start including, gaps there too as well. Or better, the Ace Queen 10. There we've got the gap, but it's a little higher. Again, hoping for suitedness of some sort here. Double suitedness would be ideal. And that's about it for under the gun hands. When we move into middle position, under the gun +1 and middle position, then we'll add in suited aces that have decent kickers and more kind of middle suited runs. Cards that are strung together that aren't going to have that really premium high end. So hands like this 5, 6, 7, 8, where even if they're not suited, we're going to go ahead and play them there. We'd avoid these from under the gun just because you're going to have more potential to make kind of second best straights with those. So we're playing just a little bit more tight under the gun, but we can open things up as we get into middle position. And then pairs, smaller pairs where we can still make sets that we'd avoid under the gun for the fear of ending up with a second best set type of situation. And then, as we said, the suited aces, so an ace 6 that are suited with the 7 8 to connect it, that works out well for us. And we're going to have enough situations to, from the suited ace, enough flush draw situations to justify playing this, even though we don't have that fourth card to help out with finding straights. Then, as we move to the button and the cutoff, these are the spots where we're going to play a lot of hands. These are the spots where we basically are looking to use the value of our position to be able to control the size of the pot, to fit our hand strength a lot better, and to be able to take advantage when our opponents don't have much. So here we open things up and we can really play basically any two good hold'em hands, especially if they're double suited or single suited. Anytime we have a suited ace, we're going to want to play it and probably play it for a raise from these late positions. Any pairs, any connected rundown hands. So we have some examples of hands like a king queen 7 8. It's double suited. Two good hold'em hands, right? You have the king queen and the 7 8. And basically we have two suited connectors. Even though we don't have king queen suited, we'd rather actually have it this way, where the two high cards aren't corresponding together. That gives us better flushes if and when we hit. So we'd play that. The 3, 4, 5, 6. We're adding this in as a good straight hand, and another rundown hand with some gaps. These are all hands that we certainly wouldn't play from early position. It gets us into too much trouble. But when we're in late position, there's fewer hands that we have to go through, fewer opponents that can make strong hands, and so we can justify playing these hands. We're not going to be in the multi-way pots nearly as often, where we're faced with lots of opponents playing, lots of opponents hitting the board. And then as we get into the blinds, we shift back to our under the gun types of range. We want to play extremely tight. Again, those small pairs just become junk because you're going to end up with occasionally hitting sets. You have to hit the set to have any value, but even then you'll run into problems. So we want to play tight, pretty close to our under the gun range when we're from the blinds, and that's if calling any kind of a raise, and really even from the small blind, just completing. A lot of the time we want to play that level of tightness because we're out of position throughout the entire hand, and much more even than in Hold'em, position is huge in Omaha. So with that, we'll go ahead and move into the second part of this video. So now we're going to review a session of $20 buy-in, that's 10-cent, 20-cent blinds, pot limit Omaha that I played recently on the WSOP.com site, and reiterate some of those concepts. So right off the bat here, we get a hand in the big blind that looks somewhat connected. We have a suit, all the cards can work together to make a straight, but we see a raise and multiple callers, and this is not a hand that we're going to want to play. So the reasons for that are quite simply that the suitedness, the flush there is just way too weak to be meaningful. It's not going to give us any value whatsoever, and we need that suitedness to the ace to want to play something like that. Also, with 3 other players already in the hand, we need to be able to make a very strong hand. We need to sort of make a nut hand to continue, and that sort of hand that we're making there, when we get big pots, we're going to be facing other big hands, and we're going to often be second best. So hands like that, out of position, don't want to play even when you're already in the blinds, especially as you get more and more players in. By contrast here, we are going to go ahead and play this hand, even though it's weak and we wouldn't play it out of position normally. We're going ahead and we're playing for just blind versus blind. It's a little bit weaker, but we do have the suitedness to the king, and we have the connectedness with the king, queen, jack. If we were under the gun with this hand, we'd still fold it. But blind versus blind, we've seen that Schutster, just from that one hand we watched, he can stick some money in and then go away. So we want to play with him. We want to take some pots in situations that maybe aren't 100% ideal, but trying to take some risks with strong enough hands. And then this board is certainly one that we'll want to continue on. Given that he's been the aggressor, it could pay off to just go ahead and check into him, but obviously with having the top pair and an open-ended straight draw, we don't want to just give up here cheaply. So I decided to go ahead and actually bet pot there. I think that's reasonable as well. So the decisions you're looking at are whether he's going to be aggressive enough to bet for us, or whether we're going to do better by betting it out ourselves. And again, I think either is reasonable. I will note that in a lot of cases, especially at these 20-cent games, you're going to have more opponents that tend to be more passive, that don't tend to bet for you. And when that's the situation, you are better off to bet for value and slow down when they start to play back. So we're continuing here, basically until he tells us that our hand is no good. We have obviously the draw to back it up. So when the jack hits here, it's not a great card for us, even though it gives us the 2 pair, so it gives us top 2 pair, Obviously, any ace queen now has a straight, also a queen nine, but it's not horrible for us either because so what hands does he have that are really continuing this far? Is it possible that he has ace queen? It is. Is it possible that he has queen nine? Well, it is, but most of the time he's going to have draws here, and they're going to be bigger draws, like flush draws or other pair hands, and we're going to beat those hands. Occasionally he'll have a set that he's slow played, but mostly by this point in the hand, those hands are going to have bet. So we're going to go ahead and bet again here. I think it's best to make a smaller kind of value bet to try to extract some value from him with some of his weaker holdings. And he chooses to go ahead and actually shove over the top of us. So we have to decide whether it's worth it to call 622 into a pot of a little over $20. It's close. As we were saying, a lot of players at these stakes tend to be fairly passive and tend to only bet when they have something. But as we were just discussing, there are a lot of hands that he can have here that we still beat. Any two pair hand, obviously we beat now. A lot of misdraws, and by making the smaller bet, we may have enticed him to try to bluff at the pot. That wasn't our intention, but it's really close. And given the odds that we're looking at here, we only need to be good a very small portion of the time to justify calling $6 when we can win 20. Doing the math real quick, we can go through, and it's 6.22 to call. We divide that by the total pot size plus the call. And the result is 0.23. So what this means, we need to be good 23% of the time for the call to be correct mathematically. And ultimately, I think there are enough situations where he's making this bet with, a pair and a draw that didn't get there, with a missed flush draw, with, maybe a jack 10 for two pair. I think there are enough hands that he does this with that we are good at least 25% of the time. So we call, and indeed he rivered two pair with the jack and the 3, so we have a stronger two pair. He evidently was looking for the gut shot that would come with the queen coming. His hand was really too weak to be calling bets this far, but that's where some of our profit comes from. Okay, here the pocket deuces are pretty weak, but obviously pocket kings is strong. That's something we'll definitely be playing even from out of position. Mostly looking for set potential, and since we completely missed the board, we're just going to go away. Obviously, having the suitedness to the king was good backup, but it wasn't why we were playing. And the strength of the kings by themselves isn't enough to get involved in a big pot. Okay, and now we have the table on the right here that we can look at as well. So we're in the small blind, suited to the ace, several people limping, and that's just not strong enough to want to play. It really pays off in Omaha to be playing a tight game pre-flop when out of position. You avoid a lot of more complicated decisions, a lot of tougher spots, and a lot of spots that put pressure on you to make plays that really aren't the greatest. In fact, as a result of that, since we can see that Schuster is playing a lot of hands, we might even consider wanting to move to another seat if we had the opportunity, because we're going to be out of position in most of the hands we play with him. I chose to go ahead and play this hand pre-flop because it's connected, and because we've seen that Schuster is playing a wide range of hands that don't really have a whole lot of value. We saw that when we limped his blind, he came in with a very weak hand that he had raised us on, and then he called bets all the way down. And the fact that he called those bets on an every street with really almost no equity in the hand, it means that that's the type of player we want to go ahead and play against, and we can even justify playing some slightly weaker hands than we would otherwise play. If he had folded and someone else had played in the hand here, we would have gone away. But with him being the person who is the aggressor in the hand, we want to go ahead and try to get value. On this board, we're not betting out with just a king high flush draw, and we're probably just going to let it go. Over on the right, this is certainly a hand we wanted to play pre-flop. It's a hand we could have considered raising, especially being in position, but at the same time, we're happy to take a pot with a lot of players in it. We can hit some sets. We have a lot of connectedness for good straight potential. This board isn't great for us, so we're probably going to keep things fairly slow, but it was definitely a spot where raising would have been justified, but limping, keeping more players in the hand, when we hit that big flop, can provide us even more profit than if we had raised and kind of bet them out of the hand. So it checks around on the right, and I think we're just going to go ahead and check behind. On the left, as I said, we're folding with just that king high flush draw. There's not enough going on, and the board was paired, so just not worth it. Now on the right, it's gone around again. We did get one bet finally, and this is a situation. Our hand improved a little bit in that we now have the open-ended draw with the jack 9. We also have the pair of 10s, which is slightly better than the pair of 9s, but not enough to be meaningful. But in the end, we'd still be drawing with one card to come to a straight, and it's a board now that has a better straight already there if someone has a king jack, and it has a flush draw. So you don't want to be drawing to a straight when there's a flush draw out there if you can avoid it. You certainly don't want to be drawing to a straight when there's a better straight already on the board. So that was a fairly easy fold, really. Okay, both of these hands are really pretty weak, so we're going to be getting out of both of these pots. Nothing we want to play, even though we're in late position on both tables. There's just not enough going on. Okay, and here again, with the ace 4-4 jack, even suited to the jack, it's not something we want to play from this early position. We'll talk about it more in the future, and as we sort of referenced from the starting hand chart, that set of 4s, especially when out of position, like if we play and we hit the 4, that set of 4s just is not all that strong. We're either going to lose a big pot or win a small one most of the time. Being suited to the jack, it's the same thing. When you get someone playing back at you, when you get the big pot that you're hoping for when you make a strong hand, you're probably the second best hand. So don't want to play that. Again, for the same reasons, if anyone raises here, we'll quickly go away. And even on the right here with the double suitedness, the queen 10-7 being somewhat close to each other, there's a lot of gaps there, and the 3 is just a horrible card. It's not a hand we want to play from out of position. And on the left, even if it had folded to us, we would not have wanted to play this hand against Schuster. We know he's not going away, and the connectedness there with the 6-4-3 is not enough. Okay, so on the right, this is another hand that is somewhat connected, but this one's a bit different because we have the ace-jack suited, which gives us the potential for the nut flush draw. So we would probably call a raise here, given that we already have money in the pot. We have the ace-jack 10 connectedness, which gives us some power, some potential for some strong straights. Obviously, the big gap there with the king and the queen missing at the top is not ideal, but it's strong enough. Again, and having that suited ace really helps us with flush draws, in that we could have opponents with weaker flush draws pay us off. This board is wonderful for us. Obviously, with top pair, having that nut flush draw, and having a somewhat slim chance of getting a wheel if a 2 and a 3 came out. It's got a lot of equity for us, and we'll be happy to play a big pot here with all the draws and power we have. We'll go ahead, we'll pot it, and we basically will be betting all the way down if we get anyone playing back. They fold, and that's okay, because even though we had top pair, one pair in Omaha is nothing. Other than that, we had draws. Yeah, if someone else had a second best draw, we'd love to get their money. But if they don't have anything, that's not a problem. We're still making a little bit of profit there, and the times that they do have a worse draw are going to be the times that we're really playing for. When no one has anything, you don't have to try to slow play or try to get blood from a stone, I guess. On the left, I choose to go ahead and limp again for that, largely because of that suited ace and the fact that we're in position. But I really think I should have probably raised this if I was going to play it. I call the raise, and this is already looking really messy. I really kind of misplayed this hand. I should have gone ahead. Should have raised if I was going to play it. Should have. I don't like the way we've played this hand at all. We've managed to get fairly lucky with it. So our, on the flop, not a lot was there. The turn, we got to that flush draw that we were looking for. So we were justified in continuing there, even though it's dangerous with a paired board. There wasn't any action on the flop, so I think going ahead and calling on the turn there is justified. And now, clearly, once the flushes come in, we're going to go ahead and call this river bet. We're not going to raise, though, because that paired board out there is going to get our opponent to fold a lot of the hands that we'd be hoping to get value from. The straights are going to be scared of flushes now if we start putting money in, and even other flushes are going to be scared that there's a full house out there. And justifiably so. Most of the time, if we raise, most of the time that we get action, that someone calls us, we're going to be in trouble. So the right play here is just to go ahead and call. Again, I think we would have been better off raising pre-flop, but we're not in too bad a shape. And interestingly enough, if we look at the hands, we basically have the same hand, except that his was double suited, and we happened to get the flush that he was going for. So this is kind of similar, that if we had 9-7 of diamonds, and we turn all the clubs on the board into diamonds, the question becomes, do we pay off in that same spot the way that he has ultimately kind of paid us off? And the answer is no. We really probably don't. It's just there's too many between the higher flushes and the full house potential. There's too many ways that a 9 high flush is just not going to work. So anyway, paid off that we played our suited ace. I still think that pre-flop we should have raised if we're going to play it. But as it is, it worked out okay. And he's questioning why we didn't re-raise. So I think that there's no upside and way too much downside. On the left here, we're just going to fold. Okay, and here, this is a good situation. We have an early position raise from Shutster, our short stack kind of loose opponent. We have pocket aces. We're suited with the pocket aces. We definitely want to be playing this hand. So the decision to make is, do we just call and play cautiously, or do we make a big bet? Ideally, with pocket aces and a suit, we probably want to be playing a big pot against one opponent, preferably a slightly weaker opponent that has a shorter stack. So if we could play a pot and be sure that we were going to get basically, as much money in as possible, as fast as possible against one of these two guys, that would be ideal. That too low is present here is a little bit of an issue, and that holds me back just a little bit from playing big. So I made the smaller raise, and then we were delighted with the result that Shutster just jams more money in. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and just basically get as much money in as fast as possible. And we see once again that he ends up here with a much weaker hand than what he should have for the way he was playing it pre-flop. This hand, honestly, should have just been folded from pre-flop. The very first in, he should not have even limped, or certainly not raised with it, and then re-raising and getting all in pre-flop was just very poor with this hand. And he ended up hitting a pair, but that pair wouldn't have been good enough. He would have had to hit another one by the river, and we ended up with a straight to boot. So happy with those results, happy with the way things have gone. That's exactly, we couldn't have done better with that hand if we had chosen, exactly what was going to happen. Unfortunately for us, he has left now. So I think with that, we will go ahead and just wrap up this video. The main thing I wanted to kind of feature throughout was how big a difference pre-flop hand selection, paying attention to your hands, and having the stronger hands throughout can really make a difference in Pot Limit Omaha. Even though it is a post-flop game, pre-flop really matters. For more poker training, subscribe to grinderschool.com and use the discount code WSOP25 to save 25% on your first subscription.